tell me about your experience with Cult of Color and with the ballet and how that all kind of came about, and what that was the first. Was that the first commission that they had for you?
Yes, and it was a large piece for me and for a first commission with the ballet. And Stephen, approached me and about Trenton Doyle Hancock and this idea he had for working with Trenton and his sort of visual art world, turning into a ballet with me doing the music. And I had grown up with a real passion for visual art, and I've collaborated with all sorts of people, across mediums that you expect: film, dance, and theater. But then I try to expand beyond that and collaborate with anybody really. And I hadn't had that many opportunities to collaborate intensively with a visual artist. And so that was one of the first exciting things. I mean, it was first exciting that Stephen wanted to collaborate, and then that he was going to bring in this significant, substantial, really interesting visual artist. And then dance is a medium that's really fun to score because it expands the music visually, but unlike film and theater, which have dialogue and talking and all these, and sound design and all these other sonic elements which are fun to work with as well, but they leave less room for the music. And so the music is doing all the audio work in the dance. And so that was really, it was exciting to get to work with. And then I had been mixing in surround sound for films, but films generally like to keep the surround sound subtle. You don't want to be pulled out of the experience of the screen. It takes you out of the moment. And so with Cult of Color, I mixed in surround sound, but went crazy with the panning. So it's all around you, and I was able to indulge what you wanted to indulge. When the THX thing spins around the room, and then you never hear the surround speakers again. I got to indulge in really using all the speakers, and that was technologically a lot of fun.
So it was originally written for, what was the instrumentation, plus some electronics of some sort?
Yeah, it was mostly acoustic instruments that were then processed. And it goes, there are two worlds. He has a black and white world, and he has a color world, and I made different palettes for them. The black and white world was grittier and more processed and more electronic and a lot heavier. And the color world was more strings and winds and more organic, acoustic, rich colors that way. So I for the opening, I took heavy drums, big, distorted, huge drums in a sort of very slow, heavy rock beat, and then put saxophones that were also blown out a little bit on top of that. And then it's immediately, the next thing is pretty oboe and lush strings, just a sort of extreme contrast.
And so now you're going from that version, and you've written Austin Theater Music Center, a quintet version for string quartet and piano. So tell me about that process and how you bring down that. Well, just tell me about that process.
Yeah.
It sounds like a drastic process.
Yeah, it was hard because the score, it's a full score, and Stephen had that to choreograph to, but it doesn't have any of the effects. There's no surround sound in the score. There's no distortion or reverb or delay or any of these other things that I used. And so part of what I wanted to do was to take those away and replace that with the sort of visceral energy of improvisation, to allow the moment and the ideas in the moment to replace the effects as to make it pop more. So I stripped it down. I took what parts there were and did a reduction, and then added things, took out things that really didn't translate. There was like that distorted drum thing. It was a very difficult thing to translate to an acoustic
Thank you.
quartet.
I'm glad you didn't. I was like, how would I do that?
No, the piano would not appreciate it.
Right.
You know. Yeah, I've beat up many pianos, and I have to be careful.
Yeah, you do a good job beating up pianos.
So I stripped away, took away the things that didn't work, added in colors to fill out, and then tried to leave a lot of room for you and the whole quartet, but especially the active improvisers to really go at it and bring an energy level to it. I try to make it, again, when I make things not super difficult, the idea is to leave room to bring energy, to bring expression.
Virtuosity. Well, we get to do this with the Aeolus String Quartet, and they were here for our last concert, and they're really excited to be doing this. And we talked about it because I know that you were sort of interested in what were their, were the varying levels of improvisation. Skills, but also desire.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
You've worked with instrumentalists who don't want to have anything to do with it, even though they probably could tap into something if they'd be willing. But willingness is a really huge part of improvisation, because you definitely make yourself vulnerable on stage, and it can be good, and it's sometimes not good.
Well, I'm sure there's that. You gain that ability to adapt to the moment, but you also gain that ability to have a bad idea or not have an idea or play a wrong note and not know what to do with it. Well,
and live performance lends itself to, it's something I call magic, and that can only happen in live performance. And the thing is that there's good magic and there's bad magic. We usually only allow ourselves to think about the magical parts as the good stuff, like the incredible sounds that you might make in the moment that there was no way that you made that in your house or in your practice room, but all of a sudden just the atmosphere, certain elements of timing or whatever. But then I don't know any other way to say this. Shit happens sometimes, but that's part of the magic in a way. Is this idea of being in the moment and making yourself vulnerable and taking a risk? Because unless you're willing to take the risk, you won't have the good magic happen either. Which is such a special experience, not just for the performer, but of course for the audience too. Because you feel when something kind of electric happens, something that couldn't have happened in any other moment. And so when I told the Aeolus that you were very interested in adding improvisation, it was a fun conversation, because we talked about it. I said, so which of you guys are interested in this? And the first violinist and the cellist, the first violinist and the violist, they improvise all the time. They're really super comfortable doing it, and they're like, bring it on, whatever. And luckily, with the other players, they're totally willing. They just feel a little bit like it's just not what they do all the time. And I sort of feel in the middle of that. I'm so ready to just be happily doing it. But I don't do it all the time. It's not necessarily my thing. But I do believe in the process of again, being vulnerable to that and letting something special happen in the moment.
Yeah, I get more vulnerable when I try to read something off the paper, or especially if I'm trying to follow a conductor. I did a reduction of a couple of the movements of Rite of Spring that Peter Bay was conducting last fall with this Alison R. Forklift Dance Works thing, and the first instinct, since I had a piano, would be to put a lot into the piano part, because it can do so much and make up for it, because we had a 13-piece ensemble instead of full orchestra, but with my inability to follow a conductor, I'm so used to leading from the piano, I really took myself out of it and gave myself tiny little parts, but there would be this one thing I needed to hit on the upbeat of the 3 or something like that. I would miss it all the time.
Because you felt the pressure of must be exactly with the concept of the conductor. Yeah. The best is when you can find a way to get it done your way and have the conductor believe that that was their idea. Yeah, but there is definitely a pressure there. Or just anytime. The same can be said when you're working with an ensemble, unless if you're truly the leader of an ensemble. But, how many times are you really truly the leader? We all sort of interface with one another and kind of give and take those leading roles. So. Oh, yeah.
When another improviser you're working with, even if you're the leader, when they surprise you and lead you in a direction, that's why you collaborate.
Yeah.
Is to dialogue with other performers, to get ideas from other people, and to be pulled out of your box and do things you never would have thought of on your own.
I think I was listening to this podcast, and they were talking about improvising on stage as actors. And the deal is, you say yes and. You don't. There's no yes or no. Like if someone gives you something, you add to it. Otherwise, you're just kind of a crappy collaborator, right? Exactly. You're just leaving someone else to do that all the time. So.
Yeah, you can't get deer in the headlights when you turn to somebody and they're supposed to improvise or so. You dive in.
Yeah. And what about the difference between writing music for the concert stage and writing music for dance, for instance?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. The repetition that makes sense for dance, because there's going to be an additional layer there, doesn't work as well if you're just doing something instrumentally. The way dance music, pop dance music, is challenging listening music because it's serving a function, and that function is to dance. And so when you listen, it doesn't progress in a way that you would anticipate listening music to.
Well, like what you were saying about film music.
Right.
Yeah, the purpose is much different. Right.
So in this, I think there are either sections where I added things that wouldn't be in the ballet, or put a solo on top of something that may be fine without a solo if they're dancing to it, because the solo essentially the dance becomes the soloist, or becomes the lead instrument, or whatever it might be. So you're not creating a frame around anything anymore, or a support network for anything anymore. You're creating something that's front and center. And so picking the right sections and developing those that don't really work on their own into something that does.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited.
I can't wait to hear what you do with it.
Sounds like it's going to be so different from the original, but obviously have this connection in a way, and that's something nice, knowing that it was written for dance. I think, for me as a performer anyway, it's something that I won't divorce from the work. Like, I'll think about the sort of kinesthetic energy of it, and the visuals of that, and the purpose behind it in a way, too.
Yeah. His colors are so vibrant, his characters are
they're surreal.
Yes, exactly. And so bringing that to it is really fun.
Yeah, and then everyone can see it at the concert on March 1st and 2nd, and then at the ballet is putting it up again the end of March through mid-April.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, so it's a great experience actually for audience members to be able to catch the music in this. It's a different. It's not necessarily pared down, but just a completely different context, and then see how that relates to the ballet itself. It's actually a very rare experience.
Yeah, I love multiple iterations of things and seeing things framed differently or in different contexts. So I'm really excited to hear what you do.
Yeah. Well, it's great talking to you.
Thank you so much.
I'm sorry we need an excuse of a little video cast to get us together to chat, but this was great, and I know our audiences will look forward to seeing you. So
we'll see you later.
Thanks a lot. Yeah, take it easy. Bye.